Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's The World This Week. We are in the company of Anne Baghamary of the International New York Times. Welcome back as well to David Chazon of the Daily Telegraph, Julia Wono of Internet Without Borders, and we're also with Catherine Field, Paris correspondent for New Zealand print and radio. After the retaking of Kobani in Syria and Saddam Hussein's hometown of Tikrit in Iraq, pundits a few weeks ago were prophesizing that the tide had turned. But with the capture of the ancient city of Palmyra in Syria, right after the fall in Iraq of Ramadi, the capital of Sunni Anbar province, it appears that tales of ISIS's demise have been, to say the least, overly optimistic on that point. And Baghamary, how long a haul is it? I'm finally seeing this week people saying this isn't a question of years, but decades.
That may be, let's hope that's an exaggeration, but who knows? It could be right on the nose. There have been some, the most heartbreaking thing about the events of the last week, of course, is Palmyra. That's the one that has seized the world by the gut, really. The thought that this beautiful ancient city that stands at the crossroads of major civilizations could be at risk, because we all know what happens when ISIS comes to town. They start smashing idols, as they did in Mosul. People are terrified the same thing's going to happen in Palmyra. Ramadi was also a very significant gain for ISIS. It's a strategically important city, getting closer to some of the oil refineries and getting, of course, closer to Baghdad. I'm also seeing a lot of commentary, including in my own newspaper, that says, actually, and this may be very much a glass half full look at the world, but it's probably a good idea to look at this as a wake-up call to the forces within the area of operation and without their allies around the world, to let them know that, the reports of ISIS's demise were exaggerated, and don't get complacent. This is a very clever, very persistent foe who plays the long game, who may lie low and wage a very wearing war of attrition on a strategic point and get people thinking that nothing will happen and then strike, which is what happened in Ramadi, which is what happened in Palmyra. So this may actually be, it's so hard to say that any of this is a good thing, but it may be an important moment for the West and for the combatants to say, we have underestimated this foe and we may need to recalibrate.
All right, reactions coming in. One on Twitter: the Syrian conflict was destroying Palmyra way before the Islamic State showed up there. The White House sticking to its rhetorical guns, insisting that the fall of Ramadi is a battlefield setback.
When the president was meeting with the chiefs of defense of the coalition partners back in October of last year, he noted that this military conflict, like other military conflicts, would be characterized by days of progress and by periods of setback.
So it was a bad day, basically, the fall of Ramadi?
It was a bad day. Well, it had been a battle area for something like 16 weeks. The bigger question about Palmyra is, Palmyra, as we all know, is a desert oasis. It's in the middle of nowhere. Isn't there meant to be some sort of aerial cover of that area, that there's meant to be a coalition of jets flying around? Did they not see all this big convoy of ISIS military heading towards Palmyra? What is going on there? Did someone drop the ball and not notice that this big force that was able to take Palmyra in a very short space of time, just a couple of days? What's going on there? Why aren't they keeping a closer watch on that? It was an easy target to take, not as strategic, of course, as Ramadi, but let's ask a few questions, not just in Washington, about what they're doing, what's happening there, and other capitals in the Middle East.
All right, in Syria, Palmyra is in Syria, and it was their government forces that were fighting against the jihadists. People are asking a lot of questions about Ramadi. When it looked poised to fall, the government in Baghdad refused to let in Sunni refugees into the capital, Baghdad.
Well, the Sunni-Shia thing is a huge problem. It makes this conflict all the more difficult for the international community to respond to, because you've got IS, which is Sunni, coming towards a Sunni area where people are not going to join what they see as the Shia forces of the Baghdad government and fight against them, because they believe that they will be persecuted and victimized by the Shia-dominated government or the Shia-led government as they see it. So it's a really big problem, and I mean, it goes way beyond national borders in the Middle East. You know, today there was a suicide bombing in Saudi Arabia, which seemed to be linked to those same tensions between Sunni and Shia. So, you know, are we gearing up for some sort of massive confrontation between Shia and Sunni in the Middle East? I mean, it's simplistic and reductive to see what's going on as just a confrontation between Shia and Sunni, but there is certainly an element to that.
Back to your question on whether it was just a bad day or not. It's definitely not only a bad day. It's a criticism of the strategy, the military strategy that has been implemented in the region for the past 2-3 years since Bashar al-Assad's regime has witnessed a revolution and has caused havoc in the rest of the region. As we have seen, President Obama has been criticized for the lack of serious decisions made on this issue of Palmyra. But what's also worrying is that at the beginning of the year 2015, the Syrian government was very vocal about the fact that fighting ISIS in the region was also an aim of the Syrian government, which is very frankly really disturbing. You know, to have to agree with the Syrian government, which has committed so many human rights violations,
and which is accused of emptying the prisons.
Of course,
that let out a lot
of course. And what is also very worrying with such position is that it completely silences the voices of moderate opposition, such as the Free Syria movement and I forgot the other group. But this is really, it's not only about archaeology. Archaeology is very important and it's very dramatic, but it's also about how are we one day going to solve the Syrian problem and bring democracy or bring back democracy to people and peace, most importantly.
Yeah, because the airstrikes have a limited impact, and so you're absolutely right. Why didn't they hit the columns of fighters on the way there? But if we put boots on the ground, we are likely just to be sucked into a really complicated conflict, which we don't fully understand, or certainly our soldiers on the ground wouldn't fully understand it. And so President Obama may be criticized for inaction, but sometimes doing nothing may be less harmful than trying to do something and charging into what would just be a powder keg.
Obama's former defense secretary, Robert Gates, saying he doesn't have a plan.
What do you expect? He's his former defense secretary. I mean, there is some political posturing that goes along with any attempt to judge, especially the Americans' participation in this or lack of participation. But, you know, there are a lot of commentators within and without the administration on both sides of the political aisle who are saying exactly what you've just said, which is that to not have a plan to put boots on the ground is actually a very good plan. To view this as something that Iraq and Syria have to settle for themselves, especially in Syria, and that the best thing that external forces can do is to reinforce the efforts on the part of the governments to battle ISIS.
That's very difficult because it entails working with the Syrian government.
Yeah.
From my
perspective,
has
been the irony since the beginning.
Which
strangest
has murdered,
the strangest
tens of
bedfellows
thousands
in
of
the
its
Middle
own
East.
people.
Its own
so
people.
Who do you choose?
Yeah.
A week ago, the dust was settling on a failed coup in Burundi, but the electoral crisis remains with a president who refuses month-old calls that his run for a third term is unconstitutional. Protesters in the capital, again this Friday, braving gunfire by police. In a country with the same ethnic makeup as neighboring Rwanda, the fear that a political crisis could mushroom into something much more ominous has triggered an exodus, with more than 100,000 crossing into neighboring states. Squalid conditions there leading to a cholera outbreak in refugee camps. David Chazan, what options are there to break the impasse at this particular point? We saw former colonial power Belgium saying it's going to cut off direct aid if they go forth with elections. Should there be more international pressure to break this impasse?
I think there should be certainly pressure on President Nkurunziza, excuse me if I got the pronunciation wrong, not to insist on having another term in office, because I think fundamentally what we're seeing here is the Africa big man syndrome, and here we've got yet another big man who's refusing to relinquish power, and it's likely to, as you say, mushroom into what could become an ethnic conflict, because Burundi, like Rwanda, has a majority Hutu population, minority Tutsis. Now, the funny thing is in Burundi that both the president and the coup leader are Hutu, but nevertheless, where there's instability, then you could conceivably see clashes erupting, either the minority Tutsis being targeted or the Tutsis who are in power in neighbouring Rwanda trying to come in to aid the Tutsis in Burundi if it seems that they're bearing the brunt of attacks by the Hutu-dominated army. So it's a really complex situation, and it could go across the border, not just into Rwanda, but Tanzania and the Democratic Republic of Congo as well.
So how do you break the impasse, Julie?
We have to remember that what is at stake here is democracy and politics, really. We have to remember that what we are witnessing now is a movement which has started in January 2015, which was started by a coalition of 300 civil society organizations, which has never been witnessed recently in Africa. I think it's very important to remind this. Today, the unrest is basically the power trying to silence people who could speak for the people and who could speak what the people wants. And most importantly, what we are witnessing here is a challenge, a huge challenge for the Great Lakes region and broadly for sub-Saharan Africa, because as you've said, there is a movement of what is called on Twitter third termites, those who don't want to leave the power when they have to leave, because obviously no matter what the debate is, President Nkurunziza has no right to run for a third mandate. So yes, what's important here is that never again, I think it's important to say that never again African citizens are ready to have people who wants to stay in power forever. This will never happen again without demonstration and without violence if the power wants to shoot on the people. And there is a very important aspect that I think is a bit overshadowed by ethnic issues, although it's very important. But I think what's most important here is that we're talking about a population of people who are less than 25 years old and who feel like they have no future in the context of the social economic context of the country. And it's the case not only in Burundi, but also in all the neighboring countries and in most of sub-Saharan Africa. An expression exists for that. It's the youth bulge. And I think it's not surprising. It was announced 10 or 15 years ago. And we are today witnessing what these young people are asking for, namely democracy, namely opportunities, namely economic stability. And for me, really, it's more about that. And the outcome will be violent only if the power of Burundi wants it to be violent, because really the demonstrators are not about breaking the peace cycle. They're really about bringing back and getting back to the peaceful democratic process.
All right, we're going to turn our attention now here to Europe. Who would have thought that of all the nations on this earth, Ireland would be the first to submit gay marriage to a referendum, a traditionally Catholic nation where abortion is still illegal, which only decriminalized homosexuality in 1993, could well vote yes with all the major political parties in favor of same-sex matrimony. Catherine Field, Ireland.
I look at it more from a different point of view, that you look around the world, there's 18 countries that have equality for marriage, same-sex marriage. 13 of those are in Europe. So I see the Ireland one more as Ireland being more part of Europe. I see it more as a sort of an intelligent, well-traveled middle class who are saying, okay, this is how we want our society, rather than a backlash against the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church has been on the back foot in Ireland for decades, and it will never get that back. So I see it really much more as Ireland saying, yes, we're a modern European nation. We have human rights, we have equality rights, and this is where we're going to make the mark. I'm not sure whether abortion is ever going to get that far, because if you've got money in Ireland, you just go to London, you have an abortion. There is actually a safety valve, unfortunately for those women who have to do it, but there is a safety valve. So less to do with the church, more to do with an emerging modern European nation.
All right. Some don't agree with you. One comment on Facebook: same-sex marriage is evil. And Bagamari.
Yes, well, anything that intersects with faith is going to have people who are arguing, this is what I believe, and that's the end of the conversation. And a word like evil tends to fall into that. No, I quite agree with Catherine. It's not a rebellion against the Catholic Church, which has not had the same influence as in Ireland for many decades. Ireland's a very young country, too, and what we've seen in the debate in the United States over gay marriage and the rapid acceptance of gay marriage as a non-issue is largely because of young people who are voting in droves and who are changing the political debate in the U.S. Young people don't understand what all the fuss is about, and I think you could probably also say that about the un-Irish as well.
And don't forget, a lot of Irish people travel. They travel all the time. They're a very open country, where particularly now a lot of young people have been abroad because of the economic turndown. So you've got a country that's open to a lot more influences than perhaps many others.
And a lot of them are coming home to vote.
All right, and viewers split. One writing on Facebook: every country should allow same-sex marriage. Good news for homosexuals. I know that in Africa, you have countries like Uganda where it's being increasingly criminalized, homosexuality. A lot of people on that continent are watching this vote in Little Ireland with its 5 million people.
Of course. But we have to remember that we're talking about two adults consenting to live together forever, ideally, and if not for less longer. But so from that point of view, there shouldn't be a debate. But of course, going back to the African context and trying to draw a bit the parallel with how the debate has been dealt with here in Europe and in France, for example, it is used in Africa by governments who don't want people to focus too much on social issues and how they are not able to solve these issues. So it's always easy to focus all the attention on the minority and to put all the everything is wrong, it's because of homosexuals, basically. And in Europe, in France particularly, a context which we can compare to Ireland, because there has been a law that was passed a year ago, if I remember well, on same-sex marriage. It was used by the Catholic Church against, those who could be considered as liberals. So it's always, the debate on homosexuality is always
a smokescreen for something else.
Exactly, in my opinion.
David Chazan, a final word on this?
I do. I mean, I take on board what you were saying about the waning influence of the church, but I have to question whether all those terrible child abuse scandals that the Roman Catholic Church was embroiled in Ireland have not had a big impact on the way people view the church, because we know the Pope's position on this. And it was interesting, I was reading the Irish Times earlier today, and they were quoting a priest who said, well, I'm in favour of same-sex marriage, and I'm going to, after I've said Mass today, I'm going to go out and vote for it. Yeah, very openly. Yeah. Quoted by name, so he's clearly not afraid of the Pope. And there you go.
All right, we're going to graduate from gay marriage to forbidden love. We mentioned the Cannes Film Festival at the outset, where Sunday night we'll know who wins the Golden Palm Award. Among the movies in competition, Cate Blanchett in Carol, about a lesbian love affair. There's also Marguerite and Juliette, a French film, an incestuous love story between a brother and a sister, based on a true story from 16th century France. And not to be outdone, Gaspard Noé's Love, which features cinema's first ever 3D threesome. I sense a trend, Anne Baghaman.
A trend of films at the Cannes Film Festival being provocative. My head's exploding. Now, what's funny about this is that every year at Cannes, directors, whoever's choosing the films, and we had a profile in the paper of the man who does choose the films, must do it with an eye toward what is going to grab headlines and what is going to spark trend stories in newspapers like the New York Times and websites, other outlets. I saw one today, I forget which outlet it was, but it wasn't the Times, that talked about how incest was going to be the next taboo to fall. And they cited this film, which I don't believe has opened widely in release. We don't even know if it's going to be successful, but the very fact that the film was made and is presented at Cannes is a kind of a stamp of approval for the ideas, or for at least the ability to discuss the ideas that it shows. This is as much a part of Cannes as high heels on the red carpet. And we all know this year it has to be high heels on the red carpet or you're not going up the red carpet. So, I'll be interested to see how this all turns out. It's very much a part of the grand scheme of things.
Catherine Field?
I'm with you, Anne. They put out films about sex. Well, no secret here. A lot of people have sex, and a lot of people enjoy sex, so they're going to watch movies about sex. So, in a way,
I'm not sure I'm going to go to the 3D one, though. There's some details Francois did not mention, because this is during the family viewing
Kids could be watching.
Yeah.
Kids could be. And they only showed it at midnight in Cannes, so even in Cannes they're saying maybe this one's a little far. But Cannes, as always, as you say, has had that bit of an edge to it that's got us all talking long after the film's been forgotten.
And we're going to talk about it more in a minute in our Media Watch segment. Catherine Field, I want to thank you. I want to thank as well David Chazan, Julia Wono, and Anne Baghaman. Yes, our Media Watch segment is next. And she's wearing high heels. Hello, Emma James.
I am, but only because I'm about a foot shorter than you, so I look very small otherwise.
All right. It seems as though and we saw at the outset of the festival, another big theme was there would be more female-directed films, more movies where women have the starring role, top of the bill. How has it gone in that regards?
Not too well, really, because, yes, they opened the festival with the big fanfare of, hey, we're opening with a movie directed by a woman. The reason that they deemed that so special is it's only the second time it's ever happened in 68 years. It starred, of course, Catherine Deneuve, who's a woman of the older generation, and it was all supposed to be building up the role of women in films, because Cannes come in for a lot of criticism in the past. However, they really shot themselves in the proverbial foot when it came to Heelgate, because that is pretty much all anyone has been talking about when it comes to Cannes.
Explain Heelgate for us.
Heelgate, well, there's a petition going on at the moment demanding clarification of high heel requirements at the Cannes Film Festival, because there were admissions, there were denials, there were claim and counterclaim from the organisers about what exactly is permissible on the red carpet. And so anyway, 6,000 people have signed this to say, we want to know exactly where Cannes stands on heels and flats. What happened was at the premiere or the showing of Carol, the Cate Blanchett movie, a group of women in their 50s were actually turned away because they were wearing rhinestone flats. At another movie showing, one of the producers was turned away, or had to argue her case quite firmly to actually be allowed on the red carpet. She was wearing flats because she had a partially amputated foot. She was missing several toes. She couldn't physically walk the red carpet in high heels. So, of course, all these stories came out, and really any idea of Cannes being the year of the woman was a complete non-starter. Thierry Frémaux, the director of Cannes, has finally been speaking on the record about exactly what went on. He says it was one rogue security guard, and it's not about the policies at Cannes. It was just one man who was very over-officious and was turning people away. He then goes on to complain that Cannes comes in for an unfair amount of criticism when it comes to women. He says it's the same everywhere. Look at the Oscars, look at Berlin, look at Venice. They're not under the same scrutiny as the Cannes Film Festival. So he's feeling really quite aggrieved that they're being deemed to be unequal in their treatment of women.
And does he have a point?
No. In my view, but you're asking a woman. If you were to ask a man,
because we saw with Sony leaks, that we found out through those leaked emails that women stars were getting paid less than their male counterparts.
Absolutely.
There are other cases of sexism in the film industry.
Absolutely. You've only got to look at the story that is taking everywhere by storm today. Maggie Gyllenhaal, 37 years old, she was told by the producer of a movie, you can't play this part, you are too old to be the love interest of a 55-year-old man. Now, this really is at the heart of all the inequality in Hollywood, because you don't see, apart from The Graduate maybe, you don't see an older woman with a younger man. And in this case, there's a huge age gap, 18 years. How big does the age gap have to be? You know, does the love interest have to be in nappies now? It's crazy. So, lots of people talking about this one. There's a very smart, cynical, sarcastic article appearing online in Jezebel, where they refer to the ageing actress, saying that her husband is her handsome caregiver. It's sad to see anyone go through this, but particularly a woman who, in her early life, was so talented and beautiful. She had so much potential, they say. The Guardian has this opinion article where the writer, in my view, slightly misses the point. She says, I'd prefer to watch Maggie Gyllenhaal in a movie than any 55-year-old man. Isn't it time we saw some more female love interests with lines around their eyes from all the extra years of laughing? Well, yes, in one way, but you could also say, hey, what's wrong with saying that 55-year-old people can be sexy too? Why does it have to be a question of, you know, I'd rather see a 37-year-old woman than a 55-year-old man. Now, last word goes to Salma Hayek, who this week was quoted as saying that the only women in the film industry who earn more than men are those who are working in the pornographic movie industry.
All right, something to think about. Many thanks, Emma James. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you. And by the way, there's more on the Cannes Film Festival on our website, France24.com. That's it for The World This Week. Stay with us, though. More to come.